The continent of Tamriel is a vibrant tapestry of interwoven cultural threads. Many peoples, kingdoms, and empires have risen and then fallen in the land of Dawn's beauty, their achievements consigned to memory, their crumbling ruins a testament to eras gone by. However, there is one people who seem to outlast them all. A fur-clad, tailed people whose penchant for adaptability and cunning allows them to weather the sands of time and withstand the harshest of lunar tides. In this video, we will explore the history and society of a people capable of being as warm as the desert sands of their homeland and as sweet as the moon sugar they consume. A people who not only managed to endure the continent's most treacherous deserts and poisonous jungles, but thrive within them, creating a vibrant civilization that flourishes under the twilight glow of the twin moons. Join us as we embark on an adventure that leads us across warm sands to a land of moon sugar and spice, where a cat must possess cleverness to survive and the fleetest of paws to thrive. Welcome to our first video on the races and cultures of Tamriel, where we will explore the lore of the Khajiit of Elsweyr. One thing we'll learn of is the Khajiit's veneration of the twin moons, and this isn't such a foreign concept because you can see a fair few interesting things from Earth as well, and there's never been a more magical way to see them than with our sponsor Mova globes. These globes spin as gracefully as the real celestial bodies they depict, thanks to a little natural magic. By using ambient light, Earth's magnetic field, and some clever mechanisms on the inside, the globes rotate of their own accord, no cables or batteries required. With that taking care of itself, all you need to do is pick which beautiful design you want to see spinning away. There are plenty of options for Earth, of course, but loads of other cosmic designs are available, courtesy of NASA and JPL's space photography. No self-respecting mage of Tamriel can go without fascinating ornaments in their abode, and now you can get a magical trinket for yourself or give it as the perfect gift to the person who has everything. Check out the full selection at movaglobes.com. You can use our code Wizards and Warriors to get a 10% discount on any order of 6 or 8.5 inch globes. Shop now at the link in the description. The Khajiit are one of Tamriel's most instantly recognizable peoples. Native to the steamy jungles and arid deserts of the deep southern province of Elsweyr, they are one of Tamriel's so-called sapient beast races, a category which also includes the reptilian Argonians, the slug-like Slode, the ape-like Imga, and the now extinct fox-like Lilmothid. The Khajiit are by far the most morphologically varied species on Tamriel, divided into 16 subspecies that range from furless humanoids, indistinguishable from elves save for their furry tails, to massive four-legged beasts reminiscent of saber-toothed tigers, to tiny house cats. Each of these subspecies, no matter how animalistic they are in appearance, are all intelligent sapient beings capable of speech and higher cognitive functions, and all of them are as Khajiit as the others. Outside of Elsweyr, the Khajiiti race as a whole is mostly associated with bipedal firstocks like the Cathay and Sutheirat. Indeed, the average Cyrodiilic traveller is often dumbfounded to find out just how varied the species truly is. We need only look at the impressions of the Crown Prince, Atribus Mead, when he was confronted by a clan of feline nomads on the outskirts of Rimmen. What struck his eye first were their mounts, monstrous cats that stood as high as a large horse at the shoulder. Their forelimbs were thick as columns and half again as long as their rears, giving them an ape-like appearance. Their coats were tawny, rib-boned with stripes of the colour of dried blood, and their feral yellow eyes seemed to promise evisceration. Two of the riders seemed hardly less bestial, although they wore shirts that covered their torsos and cravats around their necks. Where their fur was visible, it was pale yellowish green. Their faces were altogether more cat-like than any Khajiit he'd ever met. The third rider was more like what Atribus was used to, with features that were more man-like, although still unmistakably feline. The final rider had such fine, delicate features, she might easily have been of Merish blood, had her face not been splotched with irregular black rings. "I am Lespa," she said. "Our clan is Fa'ash." She motioned with her knuckles towards the Khajiit to her left. "She is Makai, my sister. There is Taj, my maternal cousin. There is Shajal, my brother." Atribus blinked. She seemed to be indicating to one of the mounts. Like the other beast races, the Khajiit have a sordid reputation on a continent dominated by the kingdoms of Men and Mer. This stigma is especially pronounced in Skyrim, where Khajiit merchant caravans are not allowed inside the walls of major cities, and tenfold worse in Morrowind, whose native Dunmer or Dark Elves see the Khajiit as naught but a source of slave labour. Even in lands where the Khajiit are welcomed, they are often kept at arm's length and are seen as nothing more than pickpockets and drug dealers. It is certainly true that traditional Khajiiti culture places an emphasis on trickery and secrecy, and these values tend to clash violently with Cyrodiilic and Altmeri notions of propriety and Nordic ideals of honour. However, the Khajiit are far more than just a nation of unscrupulous thieves. We will explore their culture and society in due time, but first let us talk about their earliest origins. Long before the arrival of Men and Mer, the vast continent of Dawn's Beauty was dominated by a tapestry of intelligent beast races. Some of these beast races, such as the reptilian Argonians, survive to this day, while others, like the poorly attested Birdmen of Cyrodiil, have long since been consigned to faded memory. The first known elf to explore the land of Dawn's Beauty was Topal the Pilot, a sailor who charted Tamriel's sea lanes in the early Merethic era, some 7,000 years before the current era. In the fragments of his writings that survive, Topal describes his journey up the Niben River, the heartland of what is now the highly urbanized province of Cyrodiil, but was back then still a primordial wilderness. There he describes a peculiar scene. The cat demons of 4 legs and 2 ran the river's length, always keeping our boat in their green-eyed sight, hissing and spitting and roaring with rage. But the sailors never had to brave the shores, for the fruit trees welcomed them, dropping their arms down to the river's edge as if to embrace the Mer, and they took the fruit quickly before the cats could pounce. This snippet of millennia-old verse seems to describe the ancient ancestors of the Khajiiti people, from a time when the catfolk were still widespread across Tamriel, before they and the other beast races were pushed into the uninhabitable swamps, jungles and deserts on the fringes of the continent by the advance of Elvish civilization. According to Khajiiti oral history, life originated with 2 primordial cats, Anur and Fadamai, who gave birth to a litter of 5 children: Alkosh, the first cat, Kenathi of the sky, Magnus the cat's eye, Mara the mother cat, and Serendar the runt. Together they were happy for many phases, before Anur and Fadamai decided to birth a second litter, this time consisting of Hamora of the Tides, Hirsine the hungry cat, Miruns the Khajiit, Mafala the clan mother, Sangin the blood cat, and Shigorath the skooma cat. After this, Anur said, 2 litters is enough, for too many children will dilute our happiness. Yet Kenathi, the lord of the skies and second eldest of the first litter, was not content with this decision. Fadamai mother, he pleaded, Kenathi grows lonely so high above the world where not even my brother Alkosh can fly. Taking pity on her most isolated son, Fadamai tricked Anur into making her pregnant with a third litter, which consisted of 4 children: Jakajay, Nirni, Azura, and Lokaj. From the moment they were born, Nirni and Azura developed an intense rivalry and fought one another for their mother's favour. As Fadamai was giving birth to the 4th and final child of her last litter, her deception was discovered by Anur, who became enraged and struck her. Fearful, Fadamai fled to the Great Darkness, where her final child Lokaj was born. As a result of her motherly exertions, Fadamai had become deathly ill. As she lay dying, she bequeathed gifts upon her final litter of children. Jakajay was given the moons and their motions, and tasked with wielding the lunar lattice to protect his siblings from both the wrath of Anur and the great darkness Fadamai had been forced to embrace. Nirni was given the gift of fertility, and tasked with populating the world with all the mortal races. Upon seeing that her hated rival, Azura, had been given no gift, Nirni felt great satisfaction, and left to bear many children. However, Azura was secretly Fadamai's most favoured child, and had been given the most precious gift of all. And Fadamai said, "To you, my favoured daughter, Fadamai leaves her greatest gift. To you, Fadamai leaves her secrets." And Fadamai said, "When Nirni is filled with her children, take one of them and change them. Make the fastest, cleverest, most beautiful people, and call them Khajiit." And Fadamai said, "The Khajiit must be the best climbers, for if Massa and Secunda fail, they must climb Kanathi's breaths to set the moons back in their courses." And Fadamai said, "The Khajiit must be the best deceivers, for they must always hide their nature from the children of Anur." And Fadamai said, "The Khajiit must be the best survivors, for Nurni will be jealous, and she will make the sands harsh and the forests unforgiving, and the Khajiit will always be hungry and at war with Nurni." And with these words, Fadamai died. So it was that Azura filled her dying mother's wishes, and so it was that the Khajiit were born into the world. Having covered the legends of how the Khajiit came to be, let us now take a moment to explore their society as it exists in the contemporary era, starting with the Khajiiti religion. We have already touched on the majority of the Khajiiti pantheon, but what we did not mention is that most of these gods are simply reinterpretations of the various Aedra and Daedra commonly worshipped by the various cultures of Men and Mer, albeit reinterpreted with feline names, appearances and titles. For example, Sheogorath, the infamous cheese-loving Daedric Prince of Madness, is known to the Khajiit as the aforementioned Shegorath, the skooma cat, associating him with the hallucinogenic drug, for nothing is madder than a cat on skooma. By far the most important aspect of Khajiiti spirituality are the phases of the two moons, Massa and Secunda, the so-called lunar lattice. The lunar lattice is personified in the form of the god Jakajay, a dualistic deity with two aspects, one being Jode, representing Massa, and the other being Jone, representing Secunda. Believing the lattice to be the only barrier protecting them from Anur's wrath, the Khajiit model every aspect of their lives to conform to the waxing and waning of the lunar cycle. This affects even the highest levels of Khajiiti politics and statecraft, something we will explore later. Speaking of politics, it would be remiss of us to explore Elsweyr society without touching upon the Main. It is said that in the rare event that the two moons of Massa and Secunda align, the resulting lunar eclipse results in the appearance of a third moon. A Khajiit born under this moon becomes the Main, a unique one-of-a-kind cat that does not conform to any of the 16 Khajiiti forms. The Main is the spiritual leader of the Khajiiti people, and the conduit between the catfolk and the lunar lattice. The Khajiit believe that only one Main can be alive at any one time, and there is only one Main, who is simply reborn in different bodies. Although the Main is, in theory, an unbiased religious leader who stays out of temporal politics, his spiritual influence on the catfolk is so massive that he often decides the fate of entire kingdoms. At the local level, Khajiit society is still divided along tribal lines, and appears to be deeply matriarchal, with each tribe being led by a hereditary clan mother. Let us take a moment to talk about Khajiiti food. Catfolk cuisine is exceptionally sweet, with candies, cakes, puddings and sugar meats being the staples of the Khajiit diet. Syrupy desserts that would make one of Skyrim's sweet rolls taste like sawdust are consumed not just as rare treats on special occasions, but as daily fare. The main ingredient in many of these saccharine dishes is a white powdery substance known as moon sugar. In Elsweyr, moon sugar is not just a delicacy, but a holy substance. The catfolk believe the sacred powder to be a form of crystallized moonlight. Thus, by partaking of the sugar, the Khajiit believe they are consuming small portions of their god's eternal souls. Although it is relatively safe to consume when cooked into a dish, moon sugar has mind-altering properties when ingested in its raw form. Imperial sources claim that the streets of Elsweyr's major cities are full of catmen driven to ecstasy and abandon, shivering in the grip of sugar fits. Outside of Elsweyr, moon sugar is illegal throughout most of Tamriel, for it is the main ingredient used in creating skooma, an extremely addictive opiate drug known to cause mental and physical deterioration in its users. Skooma addiction is unfortunately an epidemic in every corner of Tamriel, and it cannot be denied that due to their ready access to raw moon sugar, it is the Khajiit manufacturers and smugglers that play the largest role in distributing the narcotic throughout the continent. To play Daedra's advocate, the Khajiit can be a proudly unscrupulous people. One of their most cherished gods, who we have not yet mentioned, is Rajhin, known also as the Trickster, the Footpad, and the Cat King of Thieves. However, whether this makes the Khajiit a morally bankrupt people is a matter of pure cultural subjectivity. After all, the cat may steal the purse from your belt, but the Dunmeri slaver will steal your liberty, and the warmongering Imperials of Cyrodiil will steal your entire country. So who's to say what is worse? Let us now briefly retell the history of Elsweyr from the beginning of recorded history to the present era. During the mysterious Merethic era, when men and Mer first arrived on the continent and fought for dominance over each other in the north, the Khajiit already possessed a highly developed society that was dominant across all of southern Tamriel. However, it seems that by the dawn of the First Era, the beginning of recorded history, the Khajiit had been pushed into the confines of what is now modern Elsweyr by the advancement of Merish civilization, namely the Bosmeri Wood Elves from the west and the Allied Empire from the north. Moreover, the Khajiit were the regular targets of slave raids carried out by the Chima of Restain, the land now known as Morrowind. Slave raids led by the Chima, who would later become the Dunmer, continue to be a blight on Khajiit lands right up to the present day. During the First Era, Elsweyr was divided into 16 kingdoms. Unlike the kingdoms of Men and Mer, these states did not fight one another, but took turns in sharing power, depending on the phases of the moon. For example, Nerquinal was in power at full moons, while Torval was when both moons were half, or Senchal when they were both new. Khajiiti society continued along its tranquil lunar cycle until tragedy struck in the year 2260 of the First Era, when the Thracian plague ravaged the land, inflicting mass mortality. The resulting power vacuum caused the 16 Khajiit kingdoms to consolidate into two, Anaquina in the north and Palatine in the south. Unlike their predecessors, these two realms did not get along. The two kingdoms, of course, represented the moons at their extremes, but also radically different interpretations of Khajiit culture, which they adopted from the tribes each had absorbed. The people of Palatine were wealthy and urbanized, inhabiting the fertile southern jungles, and saw their neighbors in Anaquina as uncouth barbarians. The Anaquinians, made up of hardy warrior clans native to the arid northern deserts, looked to the south and saw only decadence and depravity. For many more centuries, the two lands fought, neither gaining appreciable ground. The south had the wealth and could hire mercenaries and withstand sieges, but the north had a warrior culture and could never be dominated. In the dying years of the First Era, the Khajiit homeland was conquered by the Reman dynasty, a human empire based out of Cyrodiil. The Khajiit protested this occupation in the strongest terms, and rebellions were constant in both the desert and the jungle. Eventually they threw off the Cyrodiilic yoke, and in the year 309 of the Second Era, the two Khajiit kingdoms finally put aside their differences when King Kego of Anaquina and Queen Ashita of Palatine entered into a marriage union. In doing so, they forged two realms into one, which they called the Elsweyr Confederacy, an allusion to the old Khajiit proverb, "A perfect society is always found elsewhere." This saying proved to be all too true, for Khajiit history only becomes more turbulent from this point forward. Following the collapse of the Reman Empire and the continent-wide interregnum that followed, the Khajiit were involved in the fighting, forging an unlikely alliance with the Wood Elves and High Elves. When that interregnum ended with the ascension of Tiber Septim, Elsweyr found yet another human army at its doorsteps as the imperial legions of the Third Empire advanced through the Anaquine deserts. Subsequently, Elsweyr was annexed into the Septim Imperium and would remain part of the empire until the Oblivion Crisis, when the Daedric prince Maroon's Dagon attempted an interplanar invasion of the mortal realm. The subsequent war led to the heroic sacrifice of the last scion of the Septim dynasty, throwing the empire into chaos and allowing all of her non-human provinces, including Elsweyr, to declare their independence. Unfortunately for the catfolk, the end of human domination marked the beginning of Elvish domination. In the 98th year of the Fourth Era, the moons Massa and Secunda disappeared from the sky. This threw Khajiit society into utter cataclysmic chaos, until 2 years later they returned. The powerful wizards of the Thalmor claimed credit for the turnaround of the moons, although whether this is true or not is still up to heavy debate. Whatever the case, many Khajiit came to see the Thalmor as their saviors, which paved the way for the coup of 4th Era 114, when the Khajiit homeland was officially annexed. The Elsweyr Confederacy was dissolved, and the original kingdoms of Anaquina and Palatine were recreated as client states of the Altmeri Dominion. With that, we are all caught up to the current era. in which the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim takes place. It is highly unlikely that we will find out what the future holds for Elsweyr and the Khajiit people anytime soon, but if we can draw any lessons from their history and the values they hold closest to their hearts, it is that the catfolk of the deserts and jungles will always adapt, always survive, and always find a road that leads them back to warm sands. This series will continue with explorations of all the races and cultures of Tamriel, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see it. Please consider liking, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Our videos would be impossible without our kind patrons and YouTube channel members, whose ranks you can join via the links in the description to know our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our Discord and much more. This is the Wizards and Warriors channel, and we will catch you on the next one.